white and his knees to begin to give. But by some effort he recovered himself and stayed still and upright like a dead man held by a wire. Also I saw Atene, and this is to her credit, turn her head away. She had desired to see her rival humiliated, but that horrible sight shocked her. Some sense of their common womanhood for the moment touched her pity. Only Simbri, who I think knew what to expect, and Oros remained quite unmoved. Indeed, in that ghastly silence the latter spoke, and ever afterwards I loved him for his words. "What of the vile vessel rotted in the grave of time? What of the flesh that perishes?" he said. "Look through the ruined lamp of the eternal light which burns within. Look through its covering carrion to the inextinguishable soul." My heart applauded these noble sentiments. I was of one mind with Oros, but oh Heaven! I felt that my brain was going and I wished that it would go, so that I might hear and see no more. That look which gathered on Ayesha's mummy face? At first there had been a little hope, but the hope died and anguish, anguish, anguish took its place. Something must be done. This could not endure. My lips clave together, no word would come, my feet refused to move. I began to contemplate the scenery. How wonderful were that sheet of flame and the ripples which ran up and down its height. How awesome its billowy crest. It would be warm lying in yonder red gulf below with the dead Rassen. But oh, I wished that I shared his bed and had finished with these agonies. Thank Heaven, Atene was speaking. She had stepped to the side of the naked headed thing and stood by it in all the pride of her rich beauty and perfect womanhood. "Leo Vincey, or Kallikrates," said Atene, "take which name thou wilt. Thou thinkest ill of me perhaps, but know that at least I scorned to mock a rival in her mortal shame. She told us a wild tale, but now, a tale true or false, but more false than true I think, of how I robbed a goddess of a votary, and how that goddess, Ayesha's self perchance, was avenged upon me for the crime of yielding to the man I loved. Well, let goddesses, if such indeed there be, take their way and work their will upon the helpless, and I, a mortal, will take mine until the clutch of doom closes round my throat and chokes out life and memory, and I too am a goddess or a clod. Meanwhile, thou man, I shame not to say it before all these witnesses, I love thee, and it seems that this woman or goddess loves thee also, and she has told us that now thou must choose between us once and for ever. She has told us too that if I sinned against Isis, whose minister be it remembered she declares herself she sinned yet more, for she would have taken thee both from a heavenly mistress and from an earthly bride, and yet snatched that guerdon of immortality which is hers today. Therefore, if I am evil, she is worse, nor does the flame that burns within the casket whereof Oros spoke shine so very pure and bright. Choose thou then, Leo Vincey, and let there be an end. I vaunt not myself, thou knowest what I have been and seest what I am. Yet I can give thee love and happiness, and, mayhap, children to follow after thee, and with them some place and power. What yonder witch can give thee thou canst guess. Tales of the past, pictures on the flame, wise maxims, enhoneyed words, and after thou art dead once more, promises perhaps, of joy to come when the terrible goddess whom she serves so closely shall be appeased. I have spoken, yet I will add a word. O thou, for whom, if the Hesea's tale be true, I did once lay down my royal rank and dare the dangers of an unsailed sea. O thou, whom in ages gone I would have sheltered with my frail body from the sorceries of this cold, self seeking witch. O thou, whom but a little while ago at my own life's risk I drew from death in yonder river, choose, choose!" To all this speech, so moderate yet so cruel, so well reasoned and yet so false, because of its glosses and omissions, the huddled Ayesha seemed to listen with a fierce intentness. Yet she made no answer, not a single word, not a sign even, she who had said her say and scorned to plead her part. I looked at Leo's ashen face. He leaned towards Atene, drawn perhaps by the passion shining in her beauteous eyes, then of a sudden straightened himself, shook his head and sighed. The colour flamed to his brow and his eyes grew almost happy. "After all," he said, thinking aloud rather than speaking, "I have to do not with unknowable pasts or with mystic futures, but with the things of my own life. Ayesha waited for me through 2000 years. Atene could marry a man she hated for power's sake, and then could poison him, as perhaps she would poison me when I wearied her. I know not what oath I swore to Amenartas, if such a woman lived. I remember the oath I swore to Ayesha. If I shrink from her now, why then my life is a lie and my belief is a fraud. Then love will not endure the touch of age and never can survive the grave. Nay, remembering what Ayesha was, I take her as she is, in faith and hope of what she shall be. At least love is immortal, and if it must, why let it feed on memory alone till death sets free the soul." Then stepping to where stood the dreadful shrivelled form, Leo knelt down before it and kissed her on the brow. Yes, he kissed the trembling horror of that wrinkled head, and I think it was one of the greatest, bravest acts ever done by man. "Thou hast chosen," said Atene in a cold voice, "and I tell thee, Leo Vincey, that the manner of thy choice makes me mourn my loss the more. Take now thy bride and let me hence." But Ayesha still said no word and made no sign, till presently she sank upon her bony knees and began to pray aloud. These were the words of her prayer as I heard them, though the exact power to which it was addressed is not very easy to determine, as I never discovered who or what it was that she worshipped in her heart. "O thou minister of the Almighty, wilt thou sharp sword in the hand of doom, thou inevitable law that art named Nature, thou who wast crowned as Isis to the Egyptians, but art the goddess of all climes and ages, thou that leadest the man to the maid and layest the infant on his mother's breast, that bringest our dust to its kindred dust, that givest life to death, and into the dark of death breathes the light of life again, thou who causest the abundant earth to bear, whose smile is spring, whose laugh is the ripple of the sea, whose noontide rest is drowsy summer, and whose sleep is winter's night, hear thou the supplication of thy chosen child and minister. Of old thou gavest me thine own strength with deathless days and beauty above every daughter of the Star. But I sinned against thee sore, and for my sin I paid in endless centuries of solitude, in the vileness that makes me loathsome to my lover's eyes, and for its diadem of perfect power sets upon my brow this crown of naked mockery. Yet in thy breath, the swift essence that brought me light, that brought me gloom, thou didst vow to me that I, who cannot die, should once more pluck the lost flower of my immortal loveliness from this foul slime of shame. Therefore, merciful Mother that bore me, to thee I make my prayer. O let his true love atone my sin, or, if it may not be, then give me death, the last and most blessed of thy boons. Chapter 15 of